Good evening. This is Maestro Critello with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast. Today, we have a 3v3 on Estia Province. Our first player is RAMpage 7, playing as the Force Commander. This is a tanky melee hero who can disrupt with Battlecry and buff his units. Next up, we have zeetorq, playing as the Imperial Guard Inquisitor. This is a disabling and debuffing commander who can also become a tanky melee hero with certain war gears. And then finally on the blue team, we have Chinatown, playing as the Hive Tyrant. The biggest, well, yeah, I think he's the biggest of the tanky melee heroes, very big in stature, also the toughest, starting out at 1080 hit points. He can charge and become invulnerable. On the red team, first of all, we've got twitch.tv/batpimp. Batpimp is a player who streams Dawn of War 2, so that's his Twitch link. And he is playing as the Chaos Lord, a tanky melee hero in Terminator armor, starting out with a Demon Sword and a Combi Bolter. Next up, we've got the Critical Slayer, playing as the Commissar Lord, slightly tanky melee hero, starts out with a free energy shield, and can also buff his own troops by shooting them in the head. And then finally, we have someone who has really become a regular in cast lately, and that's the Great Cornholio, this time playing as the Techmarine, a Space Marine ranged hero with a gun for every occasion. Alright then, so lately in the past few weeks, Nurgle has really blessed me with a few of his gifts, mainly in the past 2 weeks, so you'll excuse me if I'm not quite at 100%. But, just another quick announcement I want to make before we really just dive into this cast right here. Recently, the past weekend, the Elite Mod Monthly Rumble Tournament number 14 occurred. I co-cast that along with Red Ruby, who streamed along with several other streamers, and many of the replays and casts for that tournament should be available on Ruby's channel fairly soon. He did say that he was going to upload them, so, well, just hoping he follows through with that. But anyway, we have Tyranids and Guardsmen working together. It's a very odd combined arms with Termagants and Guardsmen standing right next to each other, but they are doubling our player in the bottom lane, Cornholio. They also have the advantage of numbers because they've built more squads than the players they're fighting against. Critical Slayer and Great Cornholio choosing to go with smaller squad counts, whereas Chinatown and zeetorq, they do have a few more things, although part of what happened to Critical Slayer is that he did lose his Sentinel very early and very unnecessarily in that early engagement. We've got some Vengeance Rounds Devastators from Cornholio. I think that's a great choice, particularly against the Sentinel. Vengeance Rounds are very, very threatening against the Sentinel, and I think they can be pretty nice for dealing some damage to these weaker squads at long range, the Termagants, the Guardsmen, etc. Right now, I think the tax right here, I was going to say they should probably help out the Guardsmen with that range fight, but they also have these Warriors to contend with, and I think the Warriors are going to give the Tyranids an edge here. They are a melee unit. I was about to say a dedicated melee unit, but I mean, they are melee only, but their actual melee prowess isn't really that great. However, they do knock down with their leap on approach, which is a very powerful initiation tool. So, a red team definitely starting out with a lead. Overall, I mean, it was the blue team who was over here harassing power. The red team has the VP lead with batpimp taking the edge in this particular lane. He's gone for a double Chaos Space Marine build, as well as Grenade Launcher Heretics, which are also getting their Aspiring Champion. It's curious to go for the Aspiring Champion that early. It's not exactly necessary. The main reason would be if you had to deal with some kind of infiltrated unit and wanted the detection. Otherwise, it's just kind of extra resources spent down the drain. It's going to make the squad a bit tougher, to be sure, but definitely not the most necessary upgrade. Hive Tyrant most likely will go down in retreat. Looks like he just way overextended himself. We do have quite a wall of Guardsmen right here, and this Devastator, I think, is doing some nice work, really giving like them an anchor point or a fallback point that right now I don't think the blue team has really been able to overtake. So we do have a Holy Pyre in the middle. That comes from the Inquisitor's Holy Brazier ability. It's a very nice weapon. This is one step to making her a tanky melee hero because it actually gives her some pretty solid melee damage. It looks like she's going for Very, very nice. Wow, she totally just walked around a line of sight blocker trying to tie up the Devastator Marines. However, there was a squad of Catachans right here, so they were able to use a defensive shotgun blast to knock her down. And at that point, she actually wasn't doing that well in that role anymore. Have to be careful about those melee counters. So 2 squads of Devastator Marines from Cornholio, and both of them are rocking the Vengeance rounds. I like it in some sense, although I think it would be nice to leave. It would also be nice to leave one open for possibly getting a las cannon in tier 2. And I think the double Vengeance rounds could probably be pretty effective right now, but leaving one of those Devastators open for a possible las cannon upgrade later is definitely the more practical choice overall. So let's see how it works out. Could potentially do a lot of damage, but right now it appears they're actually getting forced off and suffering quite a few generator bashes. Ooh, we have a Barb Strangler warrior. Actually did some very, very nice area of effect damage to the Catachans as well as the Guardsmen. And this is actually looking like a nice push back from the red team, rather. Was a little concerned for that Commissar Lord at first because he was really leading the charge, and I always say he's slightly tanky, and it really does make a difference. He really does not have the staying power of a hero like the Force Commander or the Chaos Lord or any of those heroes like that. So you have to be... sometimes you really do need him to run in and tie things up. It's just part of his role and part of what he can do. But you really need to be much more cautious about it and much more, like, just knowledgeable about how you actually go about it than if you're playing a hero like the Chaos Lord, for example. Anyway, I think these Chaos Space Marines gotta be careful. If they stay in much longer, they could potentially lose a model to the Force Commander or the Assault Marines, especially if the Assault Marines go for an assault jump. Knock them down. Alright, it would have been nice for them if they had actually managed to knock them down. Nevertheless, they actually do manage to take a model. So I think Batpimp left that particular squad of Chaos Space Marines in there just a little bit too long. Chaos Lord directly engaging the Force Commander. I don't know who exactly wins that fight, but in Tier 1, when neither of them have an upgraded weapon, it usually doesn't come to a conclusion without any outside intervention. They'll just beat up on each other, and they won't do a whole lot of damage to each other since neither of them do really a lot of damage to start out. And then both of them have Commander armor, so the Force Commander will actually suffer a penalty to his attack against the Chaos Lord, because his damage type melee will have a penalty against Commander armor. The Chaos Lord won't, but the Chaos Lord's starting DPS is actually pretty low with his Demon Sword. As imposing as that Demon Sword looks, the starting DPS is actually pretty low. I believe the value is 26, which is, as I said, pretty low. Anyway, it looks like the Tyranids are now coming over to the west side. So hard to remember those cardinal directions. But nice, the positioning of that Devastator, absolutely devastating. Yep, I did it. This Devastator, on the other hand, kind of got devastated. At least this model did right here. Alright, we're going to see a revive by the Inquisitor on the Hive Tyrant, and that will level her to 2 very, very easily. Looks like a lot of these heroes aren't really leveled up too much. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a Techmarine already leveled. What about a Chaos Lord level 2? Force Commander still level 1. I mean, a little early in the game to really be checking levels. Looks like we had a Brood Nest down, but it's not going to last. These Brood Nests do allow Tyranids to reinforce from them. They are a Tyranid Global exclusive to the Hive Tyrant. They can be placed anywhere. They are pretty cheap, but they're also pretty weak, and you can't retreat to them or anything like a relay beacon. So, like, if you get overwhelmed and you have to fall back to base, you will pretty much lose the Brood Nest. There are also some very, very easy ways to kill a Brood Nest. But at the same time, that reinforcement is not to be underestimated at all. Anyway, Librarian out for RAMpage. Somewhat surprising to see the Librarian. There was actually some discussion about this, that people feel they don't see Librarians that often. And, I mean, I think just when you get into Tier 2 as Space Marines, usually, oh my god, that plasma cannon on the Catachan Devils, will they get out of there alive? No, they will not. Absolutely devastated by a plasma cannon devastator. But anyway, the Librarian, I don't think, usually it's probably not going to be quite as big of an impact as, let's say, getting a Razorback or a Dreadnought in Tier 2. It's also a bit tougher to use. Not to say that it doesn't have its uses. Anyway, we have Imperial Guard crossing over to the middle now. I mean, they are actually in the middle lane, but I think before they were over in the right lane. We have some more disruption from the Catachan Devils, which is sometimes nice for the disruption, but we're seeing how it's not always enough. Critical Slayer wasn't really able to win that engagement. He was just able to stall out a bit and pull back a little. Force Commander, now with the Thunderhammer, is going to be really, really brutal against the Khorne Chaos Space Marines. If anything, I'm surprised. Why aren't these... Yeah, finally, they get knocked down. It seemed like they just weren't getting knocked down. So, Batpimp actually went for one of his squads of Chaos Space Marines. He got the Mark of Khorne upgrade. However, now that Battlecry is on cooldown, the Khorne Chaos Space Marines can actually really, really threaten the Force Commander. Khorne Chaos Space Marines are a very niche unit. They have very specific uses, and most of the times they're overshadowed by the Tzeentch upgrade, which just fits better in the Chaos composition. But Khorne Chaos Space Marines can be very, very good as hero killers and retreat killers, as long as it's not a hero who is disrupting them with some kind of, disruption attack. Alright, looks like the Force Commander, or rather the Chaos Lord, has switched out to the Blood Maul. Blood Maul giving 100 DPS melee now. And looks like, we have a lot of players converging onto the left side. Some Khorne Chaos Space Marines in a huge amount of trouble, might get wiped on retreat. Very, very close call. 7 hit points, 6. Wow, they were actually down to 1 hit point at one point. And I think the Inquisitor was hoping to finish off that last Khorne model with a Hammer of the Witches, but they managed to run out of range. So Batpimp got very, very lucky, although he did bleed a lot from losing all those Chaos Space Marine models. Moving over to this side, but I think they are getting kind of cornered. Well, actually, there's not a whole lot on this side anymore, so they're really just fighting. They really just have the red team on the front to the right, and the blue team on the front to the left. Meanwhile, while the engagements are happening, we do have some sneaky Hormigons bashing generators. They'll probably get a full bash while everyone is distracted with this engagement. Devastator Marines doing well again. Is that a Manticore Strike, or is it just a flare? It might even be both. Oh my god! I think that actually was both. And sometimes that actually is like a tactic. Use the Commissar Flare and then use a Manticore Strike. Or use them right at the same time. Because the two abilities, the Manticore Strike as well as the Commissar Flare, they do have similar startup effects. That bright red flare. And if you're not paying close enough attention, you might mistake one for the other. And that really does that really is confusing, because you really need to judge that, gauge it, because the Manticore Strike does incredibly powerful damage, whereas the Commissar Flare actually does no damage whatsoever. There is actually a slight difference in their effects. They both have that bright red flare. However, the Commissar Flare actually has like some sparks at the start, which also make a little bit of like a firework sound, whereas the Manticore Strike does not have that. So you can use both just to try to confuse your opponent, try to either get them hit by a Manticore Strike, or, well, maybe even if you just use the flare, you can even possibly bait them into retreating when they don't have to. This is clearly a Manticore Strike, however, so we're just going to see a full retreat. Those rockets did take a little bit of time to deliver. That means the Manticore probably at pretty far range. It's right in base, shooting all the way to halfway across the map. I mean, the Manticore does have some pretty good range, and well, the best range of any artillery unit in the game. But the longer range you shoot it at, the more time it takes for those rockets to travel. So it's more time for your opponent to react. And in that case, we did see Chinatown just retreat, and he really didn't suffer any losses. He just lost the field presence of retreating his entire army. Rudeness going down from Chinatown. Does that actually let Guardsmen reinforce? It'd be funny if it did. Guardsmen reinforcing from the Brood Nest. Infested Guardsmen. Wow, Predator out in the field, so we've got players in Tier 3. We've got several players in Tier 3, a few upgrading, a Swarm Lord building or cooking. I don't know what these shotgun scouts are doing being so aggressive, at least to their advantage. Neither the Tax nor the Melta stormtroopers were really attacking them while they were just unloading with a few bursts from their shotguns. Should be a Hellfury strike? No, that was just an artillery spotter smoke shell. So the guardsmen were blinded, only shoot at half of their range. No longer, but it's now been a while that the blind shell from the artillery spotters, or the smoke shell, no longer reduces range to 0. Or was it like 10%? Now it actually reduces their range just by 50%. Can still be quite effective, but you still don't want to run right in front of a squad, especially not a setup team that has been hit by a smoke shell. So VP is actually very, very even, 312 to 310. Assault Marines, no, Vanguard veterans jumping in, and while I was going to say not a whole lot to counter-initiate against the Vanguard veterans, however, there is a squad of Devastator Marines right here. Oh no, they used a Merciless Strike. I don't feel that was a good choice. I think they should have used that energy. They had the energy for a second jump. He used the jump on this second squad of Devastator Marines, and that would force them off and really leave the blue team in a much stronger position. Librarian does not want to really does not want to do this. He needs to retreat now. Alright, he did do the force barrier, and now he just needs to go. Luckily, the force barrier is now fire and forget, making the force barrier much, much more useful. But he did have to get a little close to smite that Devastator Marine squad. Anyway, Swarm Lord out on the field, bashing generators of all things. This is not quite the most efficient use of a Swarm Lord. He's actually not really the best at bashing generators, and he could definitely be doing much, much more useful things. As it is, wow, he had a Manticore strike. He got hit by a Manticore strike, bashing that generator, and lost almost 400 of his hit points. So comes in around for a flank. Don't attack the Bloodletters. The Bloodletters are just going to keep coming back. Really needs to just get rid of the Shrine of Khorne. So the Swarm Lord does, off the top of my head, I believe 85 DPS heavy melee. And that's not bad, but it's not the biggest figure. And the Swarm Lord is an utterly fantastic unit. I think he's amazing. But raw damage isn't quite his strong suit. He's actually more for support as well as like just harassment because of how fast he is. The Swarm Lord is one of the fastest super units in the game. Wow, Vanguard veterans getting absolutely destroyed. Vanguard veterans get wiped entirely for RAMpage. Terrible engagement for him. Looks like the shrine will go down, but here comes another Manticore strike. Does manage to knock some guardsmen all over the place and just destroy a few of them in the process. Wow, RAMpage absolutely falling apart. Straight up lost his Stern Guard veterans to ranged fire. I mean, I'm wondering if there was lag there, because he just lost 2 squads. And I feel like the Stern Guard loss was very, very unnecessary. But we do have Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines out of Batpimp. Really just an old, faithful unit. It's hard to go wrong with the Tzeentch Chaos Space Marines. They are just so good. Pretty much at, well, what they do. And they are very much a ranged specialist unit. They have no abilities. But for what they do, as far as just being a shooty squad, they are one of the best in the game. I'd say out of your tier 2 options, out of the tier 2 squads, I would say they are. Although Dark Reapers might be debatable. Alright, autocannon now on the Terminator is going to give them some nice area of effect damage on the Guardsmen. We do see the demoralization effect. That's all these red squares, or, wow, I failed geometry, red circles. But here is an orbital, and we are not having some quick enough reactions. We have some Guardsmen caught right in it. Yep. Very, very nice. I mean, if anything, maybe a little too clumped up. Could have possibly gotten more, but I think this particular squad of Guardsmen, it's a close call, but will it get wiped? No, it doesn't, so it doesn't even kill that one squad of Guardsmen. Blue team have now taken the VP lead. They must have had the contested VP for, well, just a bit more while after the last time I checked it. Seeing a Pergatus from the Inquisitor, one of the few tier 3 war gears in the game, and tier 3 war gears are generally very, very powerful. That Pergatus just emits a radial stun and ring of fire that does damage as well. I just like to use the word radial. It's a circle, that's what it is. Oh, Looks like we had an attempted backcap by the Catachan Devils. I'm not quite sure what happened there. Looks like they lost a lot of hit points. I just saw an explosion. I don't know if it was an IED, but if it was an IED, the Catachans should have been able to detect it. Either way, they got kind of messed up. We've got Assault Terminators, not able to finish off the Devastator Marines. No range fire is going to finish it off either. The Lascan Predator from Cornholio moving back right now, taking on the Swarmlord. A Lascan Predator is one of your best options for taking out a Swarmlord. Incredibly high anti-vehicle DPS coming out of the Predator on a mobile platform that can kite the Swarmlord. And it looks like now the Lascannon Predator should be able to finish off the Swarmlord. What? That time it looks like some kind of misfire because it didn't finish it off. Alright, that time it finishes it off. And I mean, that's just part of what Predators can do in the late game. Great at hunting down vehicles. They're great as vehicle hunters when they are themselves some of the best vehicles. And who can forget my Apex Predator? Man, is that, I don't even know, is that even a pun or whatever? Either way, the Apex Predator. This is the Apex Predator. Hunting down the Swarmlord. The Predator would have to be a little careful right here about chasing down the Carnifex. As it is, the Plague Marines or the Chaos Terminators might even be able to finish it off. Looks like they're not going to, though. Since the Terminators and the Plague Marines are quite slow, whereas the Predator is very, very fast. 2 dead blue team heroes and not in convenient positions for Chinatown to revive. I don't know. He's either got his work cut out for him, or RAMpage and zeetorq at some point they're just gonna have to save up their resources to buy back their heroes. zeetorq, though, is sitting on enough red to do a rocket run. And the rocket run really has the potential to be a game-changing nuke because it is so reliable. It is by far the most reliable nuke in the game, and it's mostly just tempered by the fact that it just doesn't have destructive power on the level of things like the Imperial Abyss, the Rocks, or the Eldritch Storm. And a rocket run from zeetorq would be great against Critical Slayer, mostly against Critical Slayer. That's really the player he would want to use it against because he would have the best chance of wiping multiple squads like Guardsmen. That's actually a close-range Manticore Strike. Actually, some very nice hits there because that was a close-range Manticore Strike. But now the Manticore is in quite a bit of trouble. Takes a rear armor las cannon shot from the Leman Russ and also takes a Vanquisher cannon shot. So, close-range Manticore Strike, but that is the risk of going for a close-range Manticore Strike. Critical Slayer communicating to his teammate to kill the Leman. The Predator does have to be careful about engaging the Leman Russ, though. This is a fully upgraded Leman Russ, and head-to-head, that fully upgraded Leman Russ, this has been labbed, will actually take out the Predator, head-to-head. Of course, there are other factors to consider, whatever support they have. The Leman Russ not doing quite as much damage as the Predator, not even having as much health, but it does have the 35% damage resistance, and that's huge, because it actually is like it has more health. It just takes less damage. It has less health, but also takes less damage. And although I call the Predator the Apex Predator, the Leman Russ is sometimes actually considered the best of the tanks. It's certainly the tankiest of the tanks, and generally lasts the longest. Whereas the Predator with the las cannon is definitely the best at hunting down other vehicles. So we do have some Guardsmen right here. They are being buffed by None Shall Fall. However, they are losing health and not actually achieving much. Some things getting knocked over. We also have a Commissar with Stubbornness, but I think, does he have allied units in range? Alright, he's still got some of those hexagons around him, signaling that he actually is getting the benefits of Stubbornness, even though I don't see many units around him. Alright, we've got a Carnifex approaching. This one with the Barb Strangler. The Barb Strangler Carnifex is pretty interesting. It looks very similar to the Barb Strangler Warrior, but aside from being a super unit, the Barb Strangler weapon on the Carnifex is actually superior to the Barb Strangler weapon on the Warrior. It actually has a different damage type than the Barb Strangler Warrior. The Warrior actually has the exclusive Barb Strangler damage type, I believe, whereas the Carnifex does plasma cannon damage. So that actually makes the Barb Strangler Carnifex an anti-vehicle choice as well. Ooh, this las cannon predator in a huge amount of trouble. One more las cannon shot will finish it off. Doesn't even need it. Just gets the burst from the autocannon terminators. And we have an autocannon. We have a predator down for RAMpage. RAMpage now losing lots of stuff. zeetorq has revived his Inquisitor, and you know, between those two players, it makes sense for definitely zeetorq to revive his Inquisitor. His Inquisitor was way over here. Would be extremely difficult to get a revive. It would not be implausible for either zeetorq or Chinatown to get this revive over here if they can just have one successful push and take back the VPs in their favor, which they need anyway, because it's 215 VPs to 146 in favor of the red team. Plague Marines targeting the Carnifex as well as a las cannon, so that Carnifex definitely taking a fair amount of damage. Meanwhile, on this side, we have another Pergatus, as well as possibly dueling Lehman Russ tanks. The Inquisitor being just a little overzealous. She's forcing melee. She's meleeing the Lehman Russ, and she will not actually do that much damage to a Lehman Russ, no matter how hard she hits. Unless she switches out to an Inferno Pistol. So, the red team are now really pushing the blue team back. And the blue team are starting to be put up against the ropes. They've managed to even out the caps at a 1-to-1, but the VP lead is still in favor of the red team. We have double Vengeance Rounds Devastators. And this is Cornholio making a hard lane switch all the way over to the left side. And although these Vengeance Rounds are nice in Tier 1, I'm not sure that they're really that powerful in Tier 3 when we're dealing with things like Carnifexes. They will do damage to the Carnifexes, but not a whole lot, I think. RAMpage calling that it's game. He thinks so. Kind of losing hope a little early. There's still a lot of VPs left to spare for both teams. But RAMpage has really been suffering some heavy losses. This squad of scouts needs to get out of here before they get hit by a stray, like, I don't know what these are, a Termagant Spike or whatever. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Wow, Cornholio is floating resources massively, and he doesn't even really have too much population to get something else. I mean, I guess I wonder if he suicided his scouts so he can have a little more population to buy something else. And he still has the Techmarine around for repairs if he needs something to repair his vehicles, as well as the blessing of the Omnissiah Global. Red team pushing back. Here is the rocket run. How well can he hit it, though? That is really the question, because the rocket run, as I said, is the most reliable nuke by far. But, well, sometimes I'm just a little disappointed with the placement of the rocket runs that I see. My record, it's tough to remember my record, but I'd say I've definitely gotten at least 3 whole squads with a rocket run. And I've possibly taken out 4 squads with a rocket run. And I'm pretty sure 5 is possible as well. It does depend on your opponent to bunch up a bit, but it also depends a lot on correct placement. And a few too many players try to do some fancy stuff with placement, where they've got like one coming in like at a 78-degree angle, and then the other one's like at a, I don't know, like a 27-degree angle. Just place them both straight, have it overlap the squads you want to kill, and it's actually better if you have the rocket run so that they bomb in your direction than in your opponent's direction, so that they will be knocked closer to you for further follow-up. But there we go, we got some squads wiped there. I think Critical Slayer actually just, not Critical Slayer, Chinatown just lost about 2, maybe even 3 squads there. Lost a bunch of Termagants. So that was a better rocket run. Although I don't know if Chinatown will have too much trouble replacing the losses from that. We have opposing Vanquisher Lehman Russes. And the Vanquisher Lehman Russ also very good as an anti-vehicle unit. It again does not do quite as much damage as a las cannon predator, but it actually still does quite a bit of damage. It does, I believe the figure for the Vanquisher Leman Russ is 37 DPS, whereas the figure for the Lascannon Predator is 55. So quite an advantage in favor over the Lascannon Predator. But the Vanquisher is still on par with many other anti-vehicle sources. Most of the Devastator Lascannons doing about 40, with the Space Marine Devastator Lascannon, I believe, doing 33. Does need to be careful, though, about getting hit by Flesh over Steel, but looks like the Force Commander is going to pay for that with his life. Just overextended trying to get that Flesh over Steel. Great thing about the Leman Russ, though, the advantage it has over the Predator is longer range. It actually has extended range. So it shoots at longer range, and that's also good for chasing down fleeing vehicles. It just shoots at incredibly long range. Not as long as a Fire Prism. We'll even go back to some numbers right here. I believe the range statistic for the Vanquisher Leman Russ is 55. Anyway, let's stop talking about numbers. We see tanks getting destroyed. These players are starting to go all in. Missiles flying all over the place. Lascannons finishing off tanks. 2 tanks down. I think both of them were both of them for the blue team? Hard to remember at this point. We also have a Land Raider in quite a bit of trouble. If the Predator just approaches, along with... Where's that other Leman Russ? Oh, the Leman Russ does need to be careful. But there really is no reason for this Land Raider Redeemer to be alive. If the Predator just pursued, it would take it out. It would only take, I'm pretty sure, 2 volleys. I'm like 99% sure that just 2 volleys from the Predator would finish off this Leman Russ, this Land Raider Redeemer. My God, they're both LR. Ooh, we're gonna see some Emperor's Wrath from the Commissar Lord. I talked about Tier 3 Wargears from the Inquisitor, and here's one of the few other Tier 3 Wargears. The Emperor's Wrath gives him the off-map artillery ability, the Commissar that is, and it basically turns the Commissar into a Manticore, which if you think about it is hugely, hugely powerful. Because it's a lot of the benefits of the Manticore with virtually none of the risks, to be honest. I mean, you're using it on a retreatable unit that is actually pretty tough, and if it actually goes down, you can usually get it revived, at least in teams, of course. I do think the Emperor's Wrath fires faster, or the off-map artillery. It fires faster than the Manticore, and the rockets are in quicker succession, although I think the damage potential of the Manticore is higher, since I think the Manticore... Yeah, I think it's higher. I have not crunched the numbers for that one, and I actually never have. Alright, but not looking good for the blue team. Blue team looking like they might be on their last legs right here. They're down to double-digit VPs. And it doesn't look like they're going to get anything on the contested VP, but what about a back cap? Ooh, and not just any back cap, but a back cap by a Tier 3 Lictor. This is an infiltrating assassin unit. Very, very tough and very, very powerful. Commissar Lord might go down here. Looks like he won't, though. So they at least get the decap, and that manages to at least keep them in the game. And I see that he's abandoning the cap with the Lictor, but maybe he should start retaking the cap with someone else. I mean, I think the Lictor is a very powerful unit, but it was also getting kited there, so it might not have been the best choice for the Lictor to actually approach like that. If anything, it might have been better to leave the Lictor capting and have the other units, which have ranged weapons, to defend against it. Here is an Imperial Abyss. Didn't see if it actually killed much, and to be honest, it didn't look like it did. Unless I'm wrong and Chinatown lost a bunch of stuff. I don't think I'm wrong in this case, but it's possible. Chaos Terminators still standing a bit in the Abyss, but they're on the periphery of the Abyss, so they're not taking that much damage. I like that word too, periphery. Ooh! What a Plasma Cannon shot. This is a level 4 Plasma Cannon Devastator squad. Absolutely brutal. That level 4 Plasma Cannon shot, like, it absolutely demolished that squad. Alright. I think this will be the game in favor of the red team, though. Just coming down to the end. He's taking down some crazy tank battles in the end as well.
Let this dark dark day fueled
All right.
fires of vengeance.
Hope you enjoyed the cast. I think I gotta get back to bed. I'm feeling Nurgle's presence upon me. Have a good night.